Okay, hello, good day. So, grade 12, this is our first lecture for General Physics 1. And our lecture number 1 would be electric charges. So, the learning competencies to be discussed for today are as follows. Okay? So, we have four competencies for today. So, let's learn something for electric charges. Okay? So, have you experienced a shock from a doorknob, or when you are rubbing a balloon on your hair suddenly lifts up? As well as, nakakita na po ba kayo ng lightning strike? Okay? So, ang physics behind those phenomenon is what we call static electricity. Okay? Static electricity occurs when an object obtains a net amount of positive and negative electric charge. Okay? So electrostatics is the interaction between electric charge that are normally at rest. So, based dito sa ating first lecture, we would be knowing how electricity or how charges flow from one material to another. Okay? So, let's start by knowing the simplest or the smallest part of a matter, which is an atom. So, an atom is consists of three parts. Okay? The neutrons, protons, and the electrons. Okay? So let's start with the neutrons. So neutrons are found on the midmost part of our atom, okay, which is the nucleus. It weighs 1.65 times 10 raised to negative 27 kilogram, and it has a neutral charge, meaning it doesn't have any charges. Okay? Second, we have the protons. Protons have a charge which is considered to be positive, which is equal to the magnitude of 1.6 times 10 raised to negative 19 coulomb, with a mass of 1.73 times 10 raised to negative 27 kilograms. Okay? If we are going to compare protons and neutrons, okay, depending on its mass, okay, makikita natin dito na similarly they do have the same value. Okay? Most likely the same value of masses. So that's why they are intact. They are both intact in the middle part of the atom, which is the nucleus. Okay? The third part of an atom is the electrons. Okay? Electrons have a positive charge with the magnitude of negative, okay, negative 1.6 times 10 raised to negative 19 coulomb, and a mass of 9.11 times 10 raised to negative 31 kilograms. Okay? So if we are going to compare electrons to protons, they do have the same value. Okay? They do have the same magnitude of charge, which is protons and electrons do have the same magnitude of charge, which is 1.6 times 10 raised to negative 19 coulomb. But since electrons has negative charge, or electrons are negatively charged, the value of its charge becomes negative 1.6 times 10 raised to negative 19 coulomb. Okay? So, same lang sila ng value, same lang sila ng magnitude, iba lang po yung sign nila. Okay? So, next, we have the mass of electron, okay, is equal to 9.11 times 10 raised to negative 31. Okay? Comparing to protons and neutrons, si electrons weighs much smaller than these two. Okay? That's why electrons can be found on the outermost shell or the valence shell of an atom. Okay? The electrons is or electrons could be noted as free electrons. Okay? This free electrons resides in the atom's valence shell and or outside shell, and are easily plucked off and carried around when acted upon by an outside force. So this outside force can be friction or heat, or any interaction with one charge or another. Okay? So the gain or lose of electrons is what we call ionization. So when an atom, okay, when an atom has removed one or more electrons from its system, it became a positive ion. When an atom or when a particle gained one or more electrons, it became a negative ion. Okay? So, since we know that an atom is consist of charged particles, okay, namely protons and electrons, so ang nakadiscover po diyang scientist is si Benjamin Franklin. Okay? He states that there are two types of electric charges that can be found in a particle, okay, which is referred as positive and negative charges. So that is the protons and the electrons. Okay? These charges could interact from one charge to another or vice versa through the law of electrostatic force. So the law of electrostatic force states that when two like charges interact with one another, they repel. Okay, they repel each other when, um, in addition, when opposite charges interact with one another, they attract each other. So, to summary, law of electrostatic force states that like charges repel and opposite charges attract. Okay, so this is the facts on atoms that I discussed earlier. Okay, so you may take a look on these statements. Okay, and then next part of our discussion, since we all know that there are free electrons that can be easily plucked off or carried out by an outside force. So, in relation to that phenomenon, meron po tayong law, okay, na nagsistate nung process na yon. So, that is the law of conservation of charges. Okay? Law states that electrons are never created nor destroyed. It can be simply transferred from one material to another. Since electrons are ways smaller, okay, compared to protons and neutrons, so that's why electrons are flowing, okay, kapag po naka-experience siya ng outside force. For example, heat or friction. Okay? So that the transferring of electrons, okay, due to an outside force, that method is what we call charging. So ang tawag po natin sa process na yon or sa method na yon is charging. So yung pag-transfer ng electrons from one material to another. So meron tayong iba't ibang methods of charging. So yung first method is charging by friction. Based from its term, friction, so nagkakaroon ng interaction between two materials, nagkakaroon sila ng physical contact, at kapag ka nagkaroon sila ng physical contact, they produces heat. Okay? Kapag nakapag-produce ng heat, based dun sa physical contact ng dalawang material na to, na-excite yung ating mga electrons. That's why nakakapag-transfer siya from one material to another. In this case, based sa ating diagram, from the rod to the wool. So makikita natin nung na-excite yung electrons, na-transfer yung mga electrons doon sa wool. Okay? Second charging method is charging by contact. Okay? From our previous example kanina, so 'di ba lumipat yung mga electrons papunta sa wall from the rod. So, maiiwan na lang tayo ng rod with positively charged particles. Okay? Kapag meron tayong isa pang rod with neutral charge, meaning it has the same amount of protons and neutrons, or it has the same amount of positive and negative particles, kapag nagkadikit yung dalawang yon, okay? So, ang tendency ni electrons would transfer from or distribute itself from um, the most positive part of the other material. So, ang tendency, mai-equalize yan. Mai-equalize yung mga, yung value or yung amount ng protons at neutrons. So, this is charging by contact. So, kapag nagkaroon ng contact, yung isa unbalance, yung isa balance, ang tendency ni electrons ay i-equalize or i-normalize or mag-pair, okay, sa lone positive charge. Okay? So, yun yung second method, charging by contact. Third method is polarization. Okay? So, third method is a polarization. Dito kay polarization, hindi mo talaga, okay? Hindi mo talaga pagdidikitin yung dalawang material. Okay? So, meron kang purely positive rod, tapos meron kang neutral rod sa kabilang hand mo. Paglalapitin mo silang dalawa, okay? So, kapag pinaglapit mo na silang dalawa, di ba, ang tendency ni electron is to pair, okay? With a lone positive charge or with a lone proton. Okay? So, ang tendency niya mag-move. Okay? Mag-move dun sa kabilang side, tapos iwanan niya yung positive charge or yung positive protons dun sa kabila. So, magkakaroon ka ng polars or magkakaroon ka ng dalawang poles, which meron ka sa rightmost side na positive at saka sa leftmost side na negative. Okay? So, in this way, dito parang ganito yung nangyayari sa mga batteries. Kaya ang mga batteries natin is considered as dipole. Okay? Dalawa yung poles na meron tayo. So, this is charging by or with the process of polarization. And then yung last process is charging by induction. So, itong charging by induction, ito yung step after polarization. So, kapag meron ka ng polarized object, okay? So, meron kang dipoles dun sa object mo, na paghiwalay mo, nasa dalawang part yung positive at negative. So, in order for us to get a purely positive and a purely negative material or particle, so you have to splice. Okay? You have to cut. Yan. So, you have to cut the material. So, kapag na-cut mo na yung material na yon, maiiwanan ka na ng isang positive at saka isang negative material. Okay? So, yung negative material na yon, pwede siyang, or yung positive material na yon, positive or negative material na yon can either be an insulator, or can be a conductor. Okay? So, para magkaroon ng electrical safety regarding flowing of electrons, we do the process of or we do the method of grounding. Okay? Grounding, bakit po ba siya tinawag na grounding? Kasi ang Earth, okay, ang surface ng Earth, the soil itself or the Earth itself is a neutral charge particle. So, yun yung pinakamalaking part ng Earth na neutral, meaning wala po siyang charge. Okay? So, kaya po siya tinawag na grounding. So, kapag sinuksok mo yung negatively charged particle mo, okay, or positively charged particle mo sa ground ng Earth, so ang tendency niyan, mag-disperse yung negative, okay? So mag-disperse yung negative at manonormalize mo na or manu-neutralize mo na yung amount of protons and electrons doon sa object mo. Okay? So kaya very essential or kailangan required talaga ang grounding sa pagde-design, okay, ng mga electrical lines. Okay? So, yeah. So, ang third part naman ng ating lecture is electrical forces. Okay? So, yung electrical forces, since alam natin nagta-travel yung mga nagta-travel rather yung electrons, okay, from one material to another, and it has an interaction with another charge, okay, in order for us to um, mathematically define, okay, the relationship of charges, okay, we use the Coulomb's law. Okay, Coulomb's law, according to Charles Augustin de Coulomb, it states that the magnitude of the electric force between two-point charges is directly proportional to the product of the charges and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Okay? It is somewhat similar to what have to the law of universal gravity or gravitation by Sir Isaac Newton. Okay? This law focuses on charges. Okay? So microscopic particles po si Coulomb, okay, nagfo-focus. So Fe, mathematically, F or electrical force, Fe, yung hinahanap kay Coulomb's law, is equals to K multiplied by Q1. Q1 here is charge 1. Okay? And then Q2 is charge 2 over R squared. Okay? K is what we call the Coulomb's constant. Okay? So, Coulomb's constant meaning ito lagi yung value na gagamitin natin sa pag-solve ng attraction between charges. Okay? K is equal to 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught or equals sa 8.988 times 10 raised to 9 Newton multiplied by meter squared over Coulomb squared. Or simply, para mas madali po nating maalala, 9 times 10 raised to 9 Newton meter squared over Coulomb squared. Okay, so take note of this formulas and givens. Okay, so the unit of force is in newtons. Okay, so that would be all for electric forces. So let us review or recall what we have discussed. So first, atoms. Atoms consists of three parts. Okay, the neutrons, protons, and electrons. Okay, the charges we have is electrons and protons. Electrons has positive charge. Electrons has negative charge. Protons has positive charge, which is equal to 1.6 times 10 raised to negative 19 coulombs. Okay, so we have four types of charging. Charging by friction, charging by induction, polarization, and charging by contact. So free electrons are free flowing. So kaya po tayo nakakapag free electrons are free flowing. So with relation to that, we have law of conservation of charges where electrons can neither be created nor destroyed but can be transferred from one material to another. And then lastly, we have Coulomb's law. So Coulomb's law states that there are force, okay, force that can be created when we have interacting charges, which is equals to K times Q1 Q2 over R squared. Okay, so before I ended up this video, I want to share this quote to you. The day when we shall know exactly what electricity is will chronicle an event probably greater, more important than any other recorded in the history of human race. Okay? From Nikola Tesla. So, that would be all for this video. Kindly tune in for the next video, which is the second part of our lecture.